It's November 2024, and there's a feeling of uncertainty in the air. May you find that this episode inspires you to grow, feed your curiosity, and nurture yourself and your community. This unease you feel, this is why I podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.
Hi, I'm Damian Ali, the founder of TalkTeaV, a website where I share my love for TV shows and movies. Thank you for having me on. And let me apologize in advance for the planes, trains, and automobiles you're most likely going to hear in the background of this New York City apartment. When I first started out, I kept hearing the same advice from seasoned writers. Just start writing. And as a huge TV show fan, I embraced that advice wholeheartedly and dived right into the world of writing with enthusiasm. And let me tell you, those first articles, they were horrible. And I know they were horrible from my wife's expressions each time she finished reading one. But I was still thrilled to share stories, reviews, and insights about the shows and films that inspired me. As I got deeper, I began connecting with other passionate people on social media, which truly changed the game for me. Before finding my community, I mainly used things like Instagram to explore museums and look at travel photos. But joining the conversations brought new energy to my writing journey. The community was growing, and I found myself absorbing so many incredible stories about the entertainment industry. It wasn't until I discovered Advanced TV, Her Story, that I came to realize much of the narrative revolved around men's contributions to TV and film. And in my house, whenever my wife and I have a moment of sudden clarity like this, we say, "The glass just shattered." And Cynthia, your episode, Pioneer Women Writers of TV with Annie Burke, was the sound of glass shattering for me. It made me realize how little I had written about my favorite female TV characters and the trailblazing women behind the scenes. After listening, I gained a deeper appreciation for women's often overlooked contributions to film and television. Your work has been a real eye-opener and a reminder to go deeper into the stories. That insight and the current political climate have inspired me to shift my priorities. Now I plan to include more content on women and the LGBTQIA contributions to television and history. I've also added a page to my site highlighting local actors, directors, and creatives in other fields and events from my community, my little corner of the Bronx. This revamp to my website and the writing is exciting and making me happy again. And that change is thanks to you and the incredible guest on your show. And honestly, thanks for giving me a chance to tell you. I'm a fan of Advanced TV history, and I look forward to so many more shows. And even if it takes me a second to catch up, at least I know I've got something there to listen to when I'm kind of running out of ideas. You're doing a great job, and I love your show. Have a good one. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome to Advanced TV Her Story. This is the place where we connect the dots of TV and feminism to American culture and politics. As promised, we've got a really great conversation today. Karly Beaumont is here.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me, Cynthia.
We have not spoken in 8 years, give or take, yes. But we sort of hover in each other's podcast sphere in social media and everything, and I track what Karly is up to and what she's thinking. Before we get into the talk of change and what change feels like and how it can push fear in lots of different dangerous directions, we're first going to ask Karly some questions about her podcasting life and what she does the rest of the time, because you're in Brooklyn, right?
I grew up in New York. Now I live in Jersey with my family. And I moved out there a couple of years ago once I had a baby and we were growing our family. We were like, we need some space and things are getting really expensive in New York. So we moved out to New Jersey. Yeah.
So the things that Karly and I do have in common, she has 2 children who are about 20 years younger than mine. So we're living the real life here. What's your path to podcasting, and sort of how did it feed into what it is that you're working on today?
So it's funny because when I was pregnant with my son, who's now 10, and I I was just sad. I needed something else other than just being a mom of a toddler who was like really running me ragged. I was like, I need something else. I need to be creative. I need to express myself in a way that would release all the thoughts and feelings that I have. Usually it was around TV because that's, culture and TV. That's kind of what I like to discuss and think about and talk about. But something that I can do at home because I had a 2-year-old at the time and I was about to have another baby. So I was like, I don't have the time to leave the house or like, sit and paint for hours, but I can talk on a phone, on a microphone and do something. So that's kind of how the idea kind of came out. I was like, I need something creative to do. And I was listening to podcasts, a lot of podcasts, TV analysis and reviewing podcasts. And I was like, I think I can do that. Funny enough, the first show that I kind of created with my best friend, Cynthia, was just kind of a pop culture show called That Pop This Life, where we were ourselves. We kind of leaned on our chemistry and our funny views on the world. And while I was in the middle of creating this first show, I was like, I really do want to talk about TV. And the big shows that were kind of at the time that I was constantly discussing with all of my friends were the Shonda Rhimes shows on TV, Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, later How to Get Away with Murder, The Catch. So those are the shows I was like, I think I can do that. And we could talk about those shows for hours. And that's how Talking Shondaland kind of was born. And that ran for a long time up until a couple of years ago where my father got sick and I had some family issues. So I had to kind of put a stop to podcasting on a daily basis. But that was kind of like my entry into podcasting. And I found the podcasting community to be not only very welcoming, but it was a true like tight-knit community that I found where we would help each other out. We started a podcast network. I met some incredible people, including yourself. So podcasting is something that I think I will always do. I'm just currently not doing it on a regular basis anymore because of my family obligations. Sure. But I still, on TV Movie Mistress, I still cover some TV. I cover Interview with a Vampire and Warrior. And this week we're starting to cover Dune Prophecy on Max. So wow. I'm still out there, yeah.
You're in the game.
I am.
That whole sandwich generation of being both a parent and a daughter as our parents get older. Sometimes they're in great health, but their situations change and you're needing to keep an eye on them and make sure that they don't get robbed blind or, harmed in some way. So I totally get that. And that is the beauty of podcasting. And you've got such a rich network, you could probably just guest for the next couple of years. And
that's what I've been doing too. So, to kind of like hold the fort, because I'm the oldest daughter. It's only my brother and I. So, I have to take care of my elderly parents. My dad eventually passed away, but I still have my mom and she's kind of now by herself and she's getting older and older. And podcasting is something that I did to just enrich myself and to find joy. I do try to find ways to still do it and still kind of interact with the community. It's just not in the same way that it was when I first started 10 years ago.
And with Talking Shondaland in particular, because Shonda Rhimes is still in the middle of her most productive part of her career.
Yes.
And seems to sort of maybe be fallow right now. Maybe she's like about to have an explosive creative moment. What was your feedback? How did your audience connect with you all talking about Shonda Rhimes' shows?
Well, I found it just those shows, when you talk about shows that are primarily the demographics were women, and Shonda Rhimes kind of has this great ability to kind of, with her shows, join us or gather us. And Talking Shondaland became a place where we all got to express our feelings about the show. And that's how I always put it to my audience. I'm like, hey, we're here and we're all processing what happened together because these shows are crazy and we're emotional. And I don't know about you, but when I watch TV, these are my friends for the next 7 years. You know what I mean? Our family and friends, and I know them, and I'm invested in their relationships and the storylines and all that. So when Nicole and I, who was my co-host, we really just kind of opened up the space to just be, this is where we're going to process our feelings, whether they're silly from these silly little shows that we all we love or not, but we're going to process. So people really took to that, and I would get pages and pages of emails with people's feelings and thoughts about the episode. I would get tweets, and it was just such a rich community full of, love and emotions and all that for these shows, and Shonda Rhimes and the people behind, the show that create them. It was just a lot of love. And that community was very, very engaged because those shows, they were fun to dissect, but also they were just kind of just entertaining. And that's how we were talking about them. But I don't know. I found the community to be very engaging in that way.
The quality of TV right now, some people would say, the shows aren't as nuanced. The series aren't as nuanced. And it's harder. I don't know. Maybe we're just in a stage of evolving, but some of the, it's on streaming and it's only 10 episodes and it seems a little formulaic. And when she hit TV, it was just this breath of fresh air.
I think that she really, not only, of course, the diversity goes without saying when it comes to Shonda Rhimes shows, where she kind of effortlessly almost introduced so much diversity into her shows without calling attention to it in many ways. But also, I think that she did something for women to just have something of theirs that didn't feel like it was manufactured for women. It was actually created with love and dedication for us, by us, you know what I mean? Where we can see ourselves in these messy characters, but we could see ourselves, especially women of color. You could see yourself, queer women. And that, I think, is the thing that I admire the most in Shonda Rhimes. She's incredibly smart and talented.
Yes. Yep.
And I think that the more she produces, the more we'll get to see what she still has left to show us. But what she created with the TGIF, which is TGIT, which is what they used to call it, thank goodness it's Thursday. I think it was something really special where we kind of all got together as the ladies. And I'm talking about ladies because most of my audience were women. Most of the people, almost all the people that I spoke to on a weekly basis about these shows were women. That was my audience. And that's, I think Shonda Rhimes' lead audience as well.
And just to close out on Shonda Rhimes. So she wrote this really great book, probably now 10 years ago, Just Say Yes, I think, something like that.
Yes.
And it is part motivational. It is a little memoir-ish in terms of understanding where she was in her career that then caused her to just absolutely put the pedal to the metal and write and pour out all this creativity that she had really been developing since she was a little kid. So it's a cool book, Just Say Yes by Shonda Rhimes. And it's an easy read and it's uplifting. We need uplifting right now.
We do, absolutely. We need uplifting. We need something to kind of inspire us. I had the week of the election, I think Netflix released the Martha Stewart documentary. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I haven't seen it, but I heard she's not terribly happy with it.
No, but I think there is a sense that I found of it being inspiring. And there's a line in it that she says that she didn't just want to be a has-been housewife, which that could be problematic for some people or not. But that I found that very inspirational because as a stay-at-home parent, which is an insanely hard job, and I'm one and I respect those who are as well, but I had that feeling. Part of the reason I wanted to start podcasting because I don't want to just be one thing.
Yeah.
We have a lot in us. And I think that there are society or culture or whatever really kind of wants to just put us in one box, in one place. And when I heard her say that, especially, that week of the election, it was very motivational for me. So I think if you can find things out there that will do that for you, the Shonda Rhimes' book is fantastic for that. I think you should definitely go out and find something that's inspiring in some way.
And it's probably at your library, everybody. So there's no reason to not read Shonda Rhimes.
And she reads the audiobook for those who don't have time to read, but you have long commutes, audiobook, perfect.
Shonda, great book to read.
Yes.
Great book to sort of lift yourself out of this darkness. Let's instead talk about comfort TV, which a lot of people use to sort of get themselves out of their darkness, rest their souls for a half an hour or an hour. And I did a little polling of some of my people on Instagram and Facebook and got this incredibly long list. I'm just going to rip through some of those right now. And when one of them is yours, just go ahead and let me know. So miscellaneous, I thought this was fun. General Hospital, which I guess it's still on. and Bluey, and Bluey is actually my grandson's favorite go-to right now at the age of 2.5.
Bluey is a wonderful show, even for adults.
Non-crime dramas. People are into anything from Star Trek, including the 1990s series, because nothing more escapist. West Wing, which to me is a little too close to politics, but that's okay. West Wing had 2 votes. K-dramas. I've never thought of K-dramas, but I mean, with YouTube and streaming and everything, there's something for everybody. And this came from and this is a friend of mine who was from high school, so she's basically my demographic. And then 2 votes for Grey's Anatomy. So yeah. On to procedurals. There are some people who say anything Law and Order, and those are, they're intense. They do take you away.
Yeah.
The new Matlock, which I've seen 1 episode of, and I thought was pretty good. It's got a little Murder, She Wrote feel to it.
Yeah.
NCIS, a little too close to government.
Okay.
The Vera Lal murders.
Oh, interesting.
I'm guessing that's a BBC product on PBS. Blue Bloods and Midsummer Murders. And
heard of that one.
We were deep into British shows back during COVID and then sort of backed off a little bit. And I do need to subscribe to Acorn, but I kind of figure we need to lose a streaming service first.
Yeah. Or BritBox also has a lot.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah.
Great stuff.
Feel good dramas. Heartland, which I believe is Canadian or Australian.
I want to say Australian, maybe.
We watched it. I watched it in Norway because it was the only show while we were traveling that was in English. Call the Midwife, which I watched the first couple. You have to be a really, really rugged woman to watch childbirth like 4 times in one hour episode.
Yeah, good show.
All the Creatures, Great and Small, The Way Home, The Gilmore Girls. Yeah,
That's
because the dramas are amongst the it's all about relationships. Then the comedies. Everybody's got a comedy in their hip pocket. Bob's Burgers, The Big Bang Theory, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Abbott Elementary had 2 votes. MASH, Friends had 2 votes.
Great.
Ted Lasso, Schitt's Creek had 2 votes. Park and Rec, The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Well, talk 50. That would be a 54-year-old escape. Hatch, Mike and Molly, and The Office.
All great shows. Yeah, very funny.
Yep.
Heartfelt. A lot of them are very heartfelt.
Reality shows, which the only time it feels like I see reality shows is when I'm at the gym, but British Bake Off 2, The Golden Bachelor. Somebody's like, yeah, I know. I'm confessing here. Lottery, Dream Home, Property Brothers, Love It or Leave It, all those renovation shows.
Yeah, they're great.
They make me a little nervous, though, because I would really like to do that. And I know how big of a project is, and I don't have time or the completion factor. And then lastly, people are out there learning and they're just saying they don't want to, their escape is probably in challenging themselves. So Finding Your Roots, anything on the History Channel, and Ken Burns documentaries.
Absolutely, yeah.
So do you have some on your comfort TV list, Karly?
I do. But I think that it's funny because as I was thinking about it, and I know I texted you and I said, I don't know, I'm not really watching much TV now, which I'm not. I've actually slow down my consumption of TV some. However, when I'm in some sort of like dark place, like I was after this election, or, if I'm struggling with an issue, romantic or whatever the area may be, I always go towards things that will help me understand human behavior better and that will help me find some compassion. And for me, those are just things that I can if I can analyze them and critically kind of analyze the stories and characters and try my best to see the 2 sides of the story that is being told. That helps me kind of then bring that compassion and that, maybe more critical lens to real life. So for me, I have shows like You're the Worst. I don't know if you've ever seen it, FX show, which is a modern take on love and happiness and friendship, with 2 main characters that they're just really bad at love and happiness. And it's an amazing show created by Stephen Falk on FX Network. Fantastic. It lasted 5 seasons and I recommend it to anybody who kind of wants a dark twist on a rom-com. Unreal also, which is a behind the scenes of a show like The Bachelor. And it's just kind of like these, unscrupulous, amoral TV producers manipulating contestants in order to get the drama that they know that the audience wants. So it's very meta in a way, and it's very much kind of like, not only is it a great relationship between these two main female characters, but also it's just really putting a mirror up into society, into like us, the audience. It's like we like these things, so maybe we don't want to know how they're created, and now that we do, it's like terrible, but we still love it.
It's like the recipe for the purple Doritos. You know it's bad for you. They have figured out how to addict us, and we can't stop. And so
we cannot. You grab that bag and you just eat the whole thing. And third is The 100, which is one of my favorite shows. It's a CW show, and it's a show that it's a post-apocalyptic show, and it explores themes of leadership, sacrifices, and the lengths that like humanity would go to in order to endure and survive. It has a lot of like, do the ends justify the means, and those kind of like moral quandaries. I love to watch, and those shows help me think about it, because then I can take it into the real world and use those same skills. So that's kind of what I find comforting. I can't escape in those things in many ways, but I don't, when I'm finding comfort, I don't go looking for like a comedy, for example.
Yeah.
I love comedies and I watch them all the time, but I not during those moments,
Yeah.
What about you?
Listeners, I'll just let you know that we will have this exhaustive list in the show notes, and you can pick and choose, and you can create your own list, because we don't really know, what the next couple of years are going to bring. And it may be that people are just deciding this is the time to cut the cord, to begin unsubscribing to some of the premium streaming channels that they've been a part of in the past. And who knows, but we'll give you kind of the best thinking out there. I will always love Bones. Bones is easy. It'll put me to sleep. I love the cast. The converse of Bones in terms of fresh casting and fresh, they weren't really fresh plots, but it was a fresh premise, was Claws. Remember that on TNT?
I did, believe? Yes, with Niecy Nash.
Niecy Nash. Yes. And otherwise, just a bunch of Journey people, actors, but the plots were incredibly rich, and it really was escapist. I mean, there you were in the middle of the Miami or somewhere in
Florida.
Florida. And it was just so well written and very well developed and underappreciated, I'll say. Hot in Cleveland. If I'm going to go to a comedy, though, I'm going to go to Betty White and Wendy Malick and Valerie Bertinelli and Jane Leeves, because they are funny and their comedic timing is perfect. And it's for the most part women's humor, situational, and it's Betty White. And then, I kind of have this tied for third, because I, like you, like to kind of dive into some of the ethical issues that writers put forth in plots. And I thought that The Good Wife did a lot of that on a frequent basis, as did Sports Night. And I realized that that's going back now 25 plus years. Basically, Sports Night, it was the last glimpse before the internet took over TV sports. And algorithms started to drive everything. So it's a little bit like the back end of a reality show, in terms of where they already knew TV was going, and they didn't feel good about it because they were so vested in that previous model and where they thought everything had been. So comfort TV is what it is, and everybody's got their special. Listeners, continue to, shoot me some more feedback about yours. We may just have a little feature, in future Advanced TV Herstory episodes that calls out comfort TV as it's been submitted and what people are thinking. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think we need to do that. And if it exposes particularly shows that otherwise never quite make it to your radar, but you've gotten a nice recommendation, good. That's what we're here to do, is expand horizons, because we need to expand our horizons, and we need to understand people better than obviously we have been doing these last couple of years.
That's very true.
And who's in charge of our thinking anyway? Because I'm getting the feeling like there is a lot of manipulation that we don't even know about. And I don't mean to seem conspiracy theoristic, conspiratorial, whatever that might be, embracing conspiracy theories. But I do think that we have gotten to a point where news funnels, the media, you only have so many choices. We're spending way too much time absorbing it. All of our downtime is spent in front of a phone. Our downtime isn't spent looking out the window or reading a book anymore,
No.
Unless you have little kids, in which case I'm hopeful, reading books to kids and doing Legos and, building blocks. And here we are. And we're trying to find this fresh place for conversation. I will just put in a plug for whatever it's since I started this podcast. I believe that TV is this commonplace, particularly old TV. If you're going to Thanksgiving or you're trying to find something that you have in common, that you have some things you don't have in common with somebody, sometimes you can start with TV. And that's where we all were before news services started just preaching to those who felt in that one way, and people could not break out of their own thought processes. And we don't really know what's going to happen once certain guardrails and certain structures of society and the government and a safety network, once those are gone, where are we? A lot of people are saying, I'm first and foremost taking care of my community or my circle. Karly, what does your community and your circle look like in New Jersey?
So I'm a woman. Parents are from the Dominican Republic, so I'm Latin as well. I'm a queer woman. I'm a mom. So my community is that exactly. I have a lot of friends who have very different views than I do, but we're very our morals are the same. So we kind of click that way. I think over the past couple of years, the politics in this country has really divided the country even more so than we have been in the past. And I am happy to report that my close-knit family friends, I haven't lost to that because we are very in sync when it comes to politics and whether conservative or not, but we're very in sync with that. We're very in the same lane. So I haven't had the pleasure of, family arguments and I have to disinvite people from the holidays. Thank goodness I haven't had that. Now I have, friends of mine that have hit me up on Facebook or on Instagram and with views because I post on social media. I rarely post about my personal life. It's all kind of like the things that I like in politics and things like that. So I've had some people, in the last 2 weeks, just really feel like they needed to tell me how wrong my views are and how great Trump is going to be for the country and how great he's going to be in instituting all these things that for me excludes the people in my community from the world. And that is new to me. I have this rule where I'm online. I'm not going to argue with people because I don't think that that's a very productive thing to do. And it's a hard thing to do kind of online. So I don't do that. But, these past 2 weeks have been very trying for me when it comes to kind of like leading with compassion and curiosity, which is what I try to do all the time.
Yes.
So leading with compassion and curiosity is how I try to open up the conversations and listen also and just listen to the others that, my side, if we want to call it that way, miss something. So like, what is it? What is it that we're missing? So I am trying to listen more than usual.
And to say that out loud is sort of modeling civility. We don't need to say everything we're thinking. Sometimes we do. Sometimes if you say it to the internet, then you might, you might get trolled or you might have somebody who wants to disagree with you.
Absolutely.
I would much rather sort of pause and think about what that message was, where it's coming from. Is it fear? Is it a sense of bitterness of something else? It sort of depends on how well I know the person. And so people are saying a lot, even when they don't think they're saying, as much. And that seems a little cryptic, but listen, it is to your point, and that is don't just listen to respond, listen to understand.
Right.
And even I think Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear was kind of encouraging all politicians to hold that as your primary asset, as an elected official, as a person that people trust. And trust is a huge thing. It's a huge thing for me. And I think that's where when people are fearful, I think it's because all of a sudden they don't feel that the standards of trust are the same as they were 20 or 30 years ago.
Of course. But I also believe that I think every generation kind of goes through a phase like that. And I do believe that, the internet and social media does some good, but at the same time, it is, I think, inherently about dividing us, not in a negative way necessarily. One of the first things that the internet did was help us find our communities in very nuanced little groups that you may not have had where you are in real life,
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is now, has ballooned into factions of people that now we can't understand one another because we're so in our own bubbles.
Yes.
And again, politically, culturally, silly things doesn't matter, but we are all in our little bubbles. And I think that if there is one thing negative about the internet, is definitely that.
It's a huge thing. And it allows everybody to believe that their opinion matters, which it should. Yeah,
Right.
But this has given voice to a lot of people who previously could not necessarily say what they want to say in a room filled with other people. Absolutely. Well, that's a good thing and a bad thing,
right?
as we are starting to learn. I think to me, we're wrestling as a country with balancing this newfound individualism that people feel emboldened when they are at their keyboard to share. And sometimes it's brilliant and sometimes it's very bitter and destructive, versus communitarianism, which is the emphasis on the community, which for the most part is what we expect our government to care about. Your city and your county care about your roads, and then they care about all of the social aspects that make the economy vibrant. They care about that, and now all of a sudden, lots of other people are making decisions based on sort of their individual focus. There's just so much change going on, and I think some people are better prepared for it than others. And I don't think white women are very prepared for it because the books are out there and you just have to realize that you've got one life to live. You got one life to live, and really, you got to need to roll with it because we're not living in 1986 anymore.
No, not at all. And I'm glad you mentioned white women because that is during the 2016 cycle. It was baffling to me how white women voted against their own interest. So this time around, I was a little more hopeful, and it was still the same, and even more so that they were voted against their own interest. And to me, I'm just like, the only thing that I can think of is that we have a party in MAGA or Republicans, whatever, that's trying to uphold whiteness and kind of hold on to it. And I do believe that white women probably believe that their whiteness will save them. They will, from whatever it is that's coming down the line, that women, whatever rights women are having, getting taken away, or whatever is coming down the line, their whiteness, first and foremost, will save them. And I don't think that they're really kind of being realistic about the dangers that are kind of coming down the line.
Right. There's no question that at some point in time, the trajectory that included the internet and offshoring manufacturing, offshoring goods and services, and everything that was a part of our economy, that then absolutely changed how money was made and where jobs were. Right. That there were a lot of people my age, more so even than yours, who kind of thought, no, we were just that the pace of change couldn't possibly make it in such a way that I won't have a job.
Right.
Or that I will have to go become a roofer. Right. And I think it moved faster for white men and lesser educated white men that their situation was just not what they expected. And who wants that for their whole life? Right. Who wants to be told by society that you have to change? That's not the American way. Along the way, white women certainly then were starting to pick up some of that strength, some of that economic power, finding it very difficult then perhaps to find men who were supportive. So somewhere along the way, I think white women sort of started making some trade-offs and started to definitely see the world through their white men's eyes.
Yeah.
And you sort of value, the person who loves you, the person who will stand with you and who wants to have fun with you. And you'll do it sometimes at your own expense. And maybe you don't even realize you're doing it because you just want to have a peaceful moment at the end of the day.
You do. I also believe that a lot of our internalized misogyny, sexism, racism, obviously many of us aren't aware of it, but that plays such a big role in those behaviors.
Yep.
And when you say, they may not even realize it, I do believe that that's kind of part of it. There are a lot of women that don't believe that women could be leaders, even that could be big leaders like a president of the United States. However, we lead our families, we lead our homes, we lead our communities all the time.
All the time.
So those are the disconnects that for me, I find that I have to actively make myself be more compassionate and understanding instead of just saying, to hell with them and they can, they voted for whatever they voted or they want whatever they want. They can go and now, learn the consequences. I think it's more than just that. For at least for me personally, I want to understand and I want to see if we can do better for next time, because I think it's a lot easier to just kind of discard it. And I'm not getting involved because when I get involved, nothing happens. It's a lot easier to say that or feel that way or even do it. But, I think that it would behoove us to just sit, think, listen, understand where the others are coming from. And I think we've lost a lot of that definitely over the past decade. But over the past 30 years since kind of like the creation of the internet, I think that has really, I feel like I'm just kind of like crapping all over the internet, but it's like, but I do think that has really, to our detriment, not helped us kind of come together, and it has put us where we are now, politically and culturally.
Yeah. And exposed us for other countries to kind of manipulate what people see and hear and believe to be truth.
How easy it is.
Absolutely. Evidently, some guy did a tweet or did something over the weekend, which was a false football statistic, and it caught fire. And all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers is repeating this the next day, and it was this sort of, it's like the modern day version of playing telephone.
Yeah.
You and I are having this conversation as not that we're patting each other on the back that we share the same beliefs, but rather we're just trying to say to people, back off of whatever information you think. There is not when it comes to your feelings and the livelihood of your family and the care of your family and being able to pay your bills, don't worry about the facts right now. Kind of care about your community. But when you're doing that, listen to how people are feeling and what their fears are, because in the end, these these huge conglomerate media companies don't care about our lives.
No, they don't. They don't, and I agree with you. And because of that, they take our fears and use it against us. They take our fears to manipulate us. Fear is a great motivator, and that has always been the way to kind of like manipulate the masses. And I think when you understand, when you listen and you understand to someone else's issues, fears, problems, where they are coming from, it's a lot easier to kind of like see how someone else is using that against them and ultimately you, because we may not vote the same, but your vote still affects me, so I think that we need to kind of like have the patience to be able to sit and listen with an open heart and open mind and understand where someone else is
going. When you think about fear, and listeners, I'm just encouraging you to don't Google statistics or anything. Google what the definitions of fear are and what the medical outcome is, because fear leads to stress. Stress leads to the generation of all sorts of weird hormones in your body. And that's kind of what causes you to do certain things. And that's why we find ourselves going toward the purple bag of Doritos, because our brains are starting to hardwire toward delivering us a little bit of relief from fear.
Absolutely.
In my life, I certainly have had a lot of experience helping people through very, very complex diseases, and ultimately being with them at their end of life. And that, for the most part, that's what people's primary fear is, right?
Yeah.
That they will no longer be. And that's the one thing that we have in common. And that's the one thing that I guess as we worry about so much change happening so quickly and that the regular person is no longer valued, we all may find ourselves having those very difficult, real conversations.
Right.
And to be the person who isn't living in that, you have to, yes, we are all individuals. There comes a point where the community then has to embrace that one person who is living with the most paramount fear.
Absolutely.
Because all the rest of it is it's just dust. It is,
Yeah.
it's been made up by other people to have you so concerned about this other thing that you're not concerned about the one thing that matters. Maybe
Right.
that seems super obvious, but
it's not, because they muddy it. They muddy the water so it's not as obvious as we may think it is.
And I guess just to sort of carry on that point, and then we'll kind of wrap things up for you listeners, and we'll find out whether or not you found this to be thought-provoking. I guess I will challenge anybody whose family is affected or their community is impacted or their workplace is impacted by such division. How long will you try to listen to these people? How long will you try to understand them? How long will you try to come to a point where maybe there's an understanding that people of all colors and of all backgrounds really should have an opportunity to live safely? Or are you going to walk away from them knowing that you may never see them again? Knowing that when you knew them 30 years ago or went to high school with them or worked with them 8 years ago, they weren't thinking like this. Their heart was closer to yours. There was so much more in common. And I don't have the answer to that. All I can think of is that there will be even more loss, more sadness.
Absolutely. But I think, embracing your community, when I think about next steps, so I gave myself a week after the election to just feel my feelings and be in that dark place that I was in. But then after that, I was like, now we can't live in this. Now what? Now what are the next steps? And I think a great next step is to go to whatever your community is, whether it's, the demographic that you belong to or your actual community, that your block. Go love and comfort one another, listen to one another, talk to those who you think, have the same heart that you believe them to have an open heart, open mind, and see if you can help them, bring them over to your side, radicalize them if that's a word that you like.
Yeah.
Also, I think paying attention to what is happening. I think I'm a strong believer that the lack of education is what the other side wants in order to continue to manipulate, because people are easier to just manipulate. That's just a fact. So I believe that the lack of civics that are being taught in schools, that we are being taught, like really is detrimental to us, because we don't know how things work. We don't know how things work. We don't know if a politician is telling us, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, if that is actually possible, So I think that, you have to pay attention, and you have to, not be a political news junkie, but actually be aware of what's happening out there. And I think that for many people, I know of those that are in my community and my family, they have woken up to that fact, where they're now kind of paying a little closer attention to what's happening, especially in our government and things like that. So embrace your community, pay attention. And I think the last thing that I would say is because now we're kind of now in the thick of it, and maybe there's nothing we can do to change it, but we can prepare ourselves in order to make whatever is coming down the line a little easier. So whatever that means for the community that you come from, if you're in the queer community, prepare yourselves. I've been reading a lot about like how that community is making sure legal documents are correct in their partner's name, spouse's name, that their sex or gender is correctly entered in legal documents, that the legality, the legal documents are where they need to be. prepare yourself emotionally, protect yourself if you need to, and then we just have to go out there and organize and start with your family and friends, and then go and look for organizations that are working towards the things that you find important, and see if you can volunteer one day, a couple of hours. So I think that those things help a lot on a grassroots level. And I think on a grassroots level is when you start to change the most minds.
Yes. Yeah. I absolutely think that your suggestions, the next steps that people can take, maybe you've thought about it, listeners. Maybe you're still sort of waiting to see when that next step is for you. Maybe you've just got enough on your own plate right now that you haven't quite sorted out where your community fits into your ability to give a little bit more of your privilege to others. Certainly there will be more demand for food shelves. Churches are going to step into the best that they can and fill some of those needs. There will be a lot of frontline nonprofits out there who would gladly accept whatever level of engagement you want to provide, whether that's money or time or stuff. You have what you have. I mean, that's the other thing. This is America, for Pete's sake. And we have so much and we throw a lot of it away. Is this going to become a time where we become much more resourceful, a little bit like COVID, that we know we should share?
Right.
Because sharing is just going to get somebody to the end of their day with perhaps a little bit in their stomach, or feeling like they're in a better place. But most importantly, that somebody cares.
Absolutely.
And when we are all so fearful, the last thing we want to think is that we're alone.
Absolutely. That's such a great point, because I do think, from what I've heard from the people that voted opposite from what I voted, is that, the government doesn't care about me. And this person is saying that he does, and that this movement does care. So I think that compassion that we've lost so much of over the past couple of years, I think really needs to kind of bring that back. However, I know after all is said and done, I do also believe that if this is too much for you and you do need to step away or to protect yourself, mental health, emotional, what have you, I think that's also okay.
Yeah.
That is also okay. And if you want to kind of get back into the fight, great. We will welcome you with open arms. But if you're not, if this is, if you're bowing out, I can respect that, because it's a lot, and it's okay to do so and heal yourself before you kind of keep going.
We're ending this on a bit of a challenging note. So we are. This is November, and last November, oh my gosh, I interviewed Annie Potts, and she has just started and is working on her nonprofit. It's called the Heart Channels. And she kind of just does good deeds. And that was modeled. And she tells a great story about being in a couple situations with her dad. And he just couldn't pass up somebody who is in need. And that's sort of become how she has lived out and used some of her privilege and her celebrity to make a difference in the lives of others. So I guess that's where we are, listeners. We have Thanksgiving, we have holidays coming up where there's a part of you that wants to just celebrate and let go and love the moment, be in the moment with the people you're with. That's absolutely true. Also know, though, that perhaps this holiday and future holiday seasons, even more so, there will be more need. So how do you balance that? And how do you just try to get down to the essence of gratitude and the importance of community, whoever those people are? And cherish them. And if they don't bring you joy, then maybe you say this is the year where I choose not to be with those people. People are starting to make a lot of decisions based on what they think is best for themselves. And so we just want you to continue thriving in your situation and feeling like you're not alone. And that's part of the reason why I stepped behind the microphone. That's what Karly was saying, helped get her through some really hard years of being a young mom. And now she's just got sassy preteens and a teenager to keep her young. And these are great years too, I will say. They are the ones that then, when you're my age, you look back on and think to yourself, how did I do all that?
Yeah.
So enjoy. Listeners, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Let us know what you think. We just are here to continue believing that within TV, there's lots of role modeling, there's lots of examples. You go rebuild yourself and then take it out into your real world. Any last thought, Karly?
I did. You asked, if there's anything good that can possibly come from all of this. And I have been thinking a lot about that. And I think there is. And I think that our American family, we always come together when we need to come together. I remember what happened after 9/11. As someone who grew up in New York and was in New York when that happened, the way that I found it surprising at the time, the way that we all kind of rallied and were very human towards one another, and we rallied and we got together. It happened during COVID. So I do believe that this isn't necessarily all doom and gloom. I do think that we, if need be, when the time comes, we will come together. So that's that's what I'm seeing. When things get really, really bad, we come together and we make sure that we're okay and hopefully, change the course.
Change the course. All right. That's where we are, listeners. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, please hang with me to the very end because you know what? This is the part where I express gratitude for all the people and processes that make this podcast happen every single month. And this has been an important episode. Find that list of fantastic comfort TV shows and other resources in the show notes. How do I come upon this list of comfort TV shows? Well, it was an inquiry I sent out to my Facebook and Instagram followers. So please follow me on social media, including Blue Sky, and let's connect. Also, this might be a good time for you to share Advanced TV Herstory with folks who are looking to break away from doom scrolling. They can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, and most podcast apps. And on YouTube, many of these episodes are available as video. Foremost, I am grateful to Karly Beaumont and Damian Ali for sharing of themselves in this episode, and also editors Mary Lou Morose and Nivea Lopez, who stitched together all the pieces so well that I'm sure Betsy Ross and Vera Wang would approve. I am very proud that they're on my team. Music, as always, is Jazzer's Take Me Higher from freemusicarchive.org. And lastly, you know what? We do not know what the next year holds. Today, Karly, Damian, Mary Lou, Nivea, and I tried to assure you that you are not alone. Most of us will find ways to restore and sustain our daily energy. And this is why we podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.